Alright, so we're going to open Photoshop here and let's just get started. This is a beginner's tutorial on some of the basic tools and methods on making a very simple image, but you're going to cover some things that are used in advanced illustrations as well. Just go to Create New here. We're going to learn by just doing. Okay. You may or may not have these with you when you just install Photoshop, but for now let's type in 3840 by 2160 in the dimensions here. 3840 for width, 2160 in height, and make sure it's under pixels. That's the units. So this is what they call 4K definition. It's what's standard on the big screen TVs nowadays. It's the maximum resolution, the maximum clarity that people can view their TVs on right now. Okay, hit create. All right. So if you just started Photoshop and just opened it, your screen might look a little different in that you're going to have other windows out here. For example, this color, you're probably going to have something like this here, but it's not going to be laid out the same way. I just want to show you how everything can kind of dock and undock here. So yours might look something more like this, and then some other things going on. Just know that you can adjust anything as you go, and you can remove anything here by going to this little several bars icon here, the menu, and go down to Close Tab Group. Remember, they will always exist right here under the Windows tab. Okay. So I really just recommend keeping the layers out because we're going to be working with multiple layers and we need as much space here as possible. We don't really need the other stuff right away. I normally keep these other ones tucked away because layers are really the most important. Alright, so let's just get started right away. Down here, you'll see these icons here. We're going to go to the new file here. We're going to create a new layer. And then let's just make a circle. So by default, yours might be this one, the rectangular. Every tool has a different set of types. That one does not. That's a new thing. So we'll get to most of these throughout our course here. Whenever it's useful, we'll get to it. So right now, see, I double clicked and it went out. Anytime it comes out like this, the toolbar comes out or anything comes out, you can just click the upper area here and just hold and drag and wait for that blue, try to drag it into the side so that that blue highlight comes out, and then you can let go and it docks. It snaps in right after you do that. So that goes for any toolbar here, including the window that you're using here as well. So aim it and let go. So that's a little bit of the interface there. So let's just start working. Click on this, just click and hold. Let's go to the elliptical marquee tool. We're just going to make a ball. We're on this new layer here. Just going to make a ball. So if you just click and drag, you'll stretch it to be all sorts of ovals, but if you hold shift, it'll snap into a perfect circle. So that's the best way to make a ball there. And then I press D to snap this back into black and white. Earlier it was on some other color. D goes to your default colors. So right now, whichever one's in front is going to be what any brush or fill is going to apply. So right now it's black. I'm going to hold Alt and backspace. It's going to fill the current area that I had selected. Now I want to work with this, but first I want to deselect it. While it's in this selected mode, sometimes it can be hard to work when you have something selected. So I'm going to do a Control D, and it deselects. Now what I want to do is I want to change the color of this circle here. While it's in black, you're not going to be able to change the color. Normally we're going to change color with the Control U. On Mac, if you have Mac, anytime I say Control, I mean Command. It'd be the same thing. So this is how we change colors in a current layer. But right now, because it's black, it doesn't really have a hue to go through. It doesn't have a color to change saturation for. But we could do its lightness. You know, obviously black at 1 it's already 0, so it's already black. So we're just going to go, you know, so that can change. So I just want to show you, we just need some color to start out with in order to change colors in the future. So we're going to make a new layer here. And now we're going to do what's called an attach. We're going to hold the Alt button. On Mac it would be Option. Every time I say Alt on Mac I mean Option. I'm using PC here. Hold Alt, and when you hold Alt, when you hover your mouse over the layers, and especially in between the layers, you'll see that down arrow with a box there. When you see that, click it. And right away you see that attach. So now what happens is anything that happens on this layer is going to only show up where there are pixels in this layer. And by pixels I mean, if you're not familiar, this is what we're working with. Earlier when we set the dimensions, this is the number of pixels wide and high. So just keep in mind this is what we're working with fundamentally. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's a very common method here. I'm just going to get a color. I can choose the color right now, or if let's say you're in a rush or you're not sure what color right away, you can just choose a random color, hit OK, and then we're going to do another fill. This time with nothing selected, your fill's going to just cover the whole page. Alt delete. So Alt backspace on PC, Option delete on Mac. All right. So that filled it. If I detach it, so I hold Alt and click on the, hover my mouse in between the layers and click on the arrow with a slash now, it just it just shows you the true form of that whole layer there. So that's what I want, is for the ball to turn orange. Now to keep it simple, I'm just going to right click on this layer. I'm going to merge down because I don't need that whole layer there just to take up a solid color. And what I'm going to do is now we can go back to the Control U. Now you can change the hue. See, because there's color to play with. And you can change the saturation, which is how how fresh the color is, or how gray it is. See, I like an orange, simple orange, so I'm just going to, let's say, do something like this. We're going to make an orange ball today, so I don't know why. I like orange. We'll just do that. You can use whatever color you want. Okay. So there's my ball. Let's give it a ground, a floor. So I'm just going to make a new layer here, and because I want the orange ball to appear above the floor, I'm going to drag this layer down underneath the orange ball. I'm going to take this, click and hold the circular marquee tool and elliptical marquee tool, and go to the rectangular marquee tool. Click and drag until you just fill it. You can click outside of the canvas. It doesn't matter. It's not start clicking and dragging from outside, and then just drag it in. It's only going to start when it hits the beginning of the canvas, or I should say when it hits the boundaries of the canvas there. Okay. See, so even if you dragged out, nothing really happens over here. It's just going to end there. Hold Alt if you need to cut. Hold Alt, and click and drag. If you need to kind of, let's say I didn't like that, if I wanted to trim it, I can always hold Alt and do that. The opposite is holding Shift, and I can add to it. You see, if I wanted to make buildings in the distance or something, it'd be something like that. So that's how you add or subtract to a selection. Is holding Alt is to subtract, holding Shift is add. Okay. Anyways, now that we have a platform, let's do another fill. This time I want to make sure it's not orange, but I also don't want white. By the way, you can press X to swap, or you can click this button here. But I don't want either of these colors. I want something a little different, so I'm just going to click. You can click into it, and then something that's a little neutral, and it could be a bluish gray. Hit OK. It doesn't really matter because remember, as long as there's color, you can always change it later with the Control U, or you can attach something else over it and change the color as we did for the ball. All right. So now, let's say I want to position it differently. Let's say I want the ball over to the left more or to the right more. You do a Control T, and then you'll get this. it puts in what's called a transform mode. In this mode, you can move it anywhere you want. You can scale it, stretch it. You can do all sorts of things. I'm right-clicking here. You can play with warp. You can do crazy things like that. But today we're not going to go there. I'm going to do a Control-Z. Well, you know, I'm going to have to hit exit here. And it'll snap back. If I hit enter, then it saves it. Okay. Control-T to move. Another way to move things quickly is if you press the V button. It'll go to the move tool here. This will also work. It's just that sometimes, I mean, because this doesn't show the boundaries, sometimes when the piece gets complicated, that might not be what you want. You might accidentally select something on an underneath layer and not work out for you so well. But while you're in this tool, if you click on any item here, you see my layer kind of jump to that item. And that's why when the piece gets complex, you can use this to kind of find where your item is. But at the same time, you can also accidentally select the wrong layer, and then you start painting and stuff, and then you'll start painting and stuff, and then you're not going to know that you're on that layer. You thought you were on the ball layer. So be careful with this V tool, the move tool. Okay, that's why I always recommend doing a Control-T when you're moving. It's just a little safer. It's more clear that something's ready for moving action there. And when you're in this mode, you can't draw somewhere else. If I press B, as in brush, it won't let me, unless I click out of it, of course. Okay, and then you'll know because it's gone. Okay, so Control-T, I'm going to put position where I want, hit enter to save it. Now I want to add a bit of a shadow. I'm going to click the bottom layer here because I want to make a new layer underneath it. So I'm going to go here and go to the new. You could have also just pressed the new and then it would have made one above the current one and dragged it down. Now I'm going to go back to the rectangular marquee tool. Just going to make a quick little shadow shape here. Press D to make sure I'm on black, even though I know it was there. Alt backspace again to fill that selection in the layer, and then Control D to deselect. So now we have what kind of looks like a shadow, but it's too dark. So how can we make it look more like shadow? I'm going to use this opacity gauge here. You can change this, just lower it, and that changes how transparent it is. So a property of shadows is that it's transparent, and that it shows color underneath of the surface underneath it. So we need to lower that. And now let's add some shading for the balls to give it a little bit of a three-dimensional look. So I'm going to click here to be on the ball, and then I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to attach this new layer because I'm about to paint on this ball, and I only want to paint on the ball. I don't want it anywhere else. And I'm just going to paint the shadows. So I'm going to press B, and this is where it'll take me to the B brush, and this is where we can start messing with the brush. Now, if it's not this one, if it's not a soft brush, you can click on this icon with the folder and the brush. This brings up your brush settings. Now, in the settings, okay, we're going to go through this in depth in the future, but for right now, just make sure that it's this first one, the soft brush. You can lower the spacing a little bit. If you increase it all the way, check it out. It's just, you can see that it's made of just a bunch of repeats of the same thing. So I like to lower it so that I don't see any dots anywhere. So I just lower it to, like, originally it was 5. It's probably fine, 2 or 3. I don't know. Something like that is fine. Not too big of a deal for this piece. It's not too sensitive to that. So I'm going to press B, and then now I had caps lock on. You'll notice that sometimes you might find that you don't see the shape of your brush. It's because you have caps lock on. It's a very common thing to accidentally click. It left me confused for a long time, for a while, when I was learning Photoshop. So just letting you know, caps lock. And then if you hold Alt and right click and drag, you see you can change the size of your brush. I find it to be the easiest way if I'm using a mouse.
Another way is the brackets on your keyboard next to the P key, the left and right brackets. Right bracket increases size, left bracket decreases the size. Okay? Now, which by the way, also to zoom in and out, you can do a Control minus to zoom out, Control T to zoom in. If you hold space, well, you can't pan, but here, if I were to use, if I hold space, you can pan after zooming in, but not if you're out. Well, after, right? You can pan after you zoomed out, but not if it's already snapped to the center. Another way, you might have noticed I did this because I get kind of used to this sometimes. I do it on accident. You can zoom in and out really quickly by holding Control and space at the same time, and it gives you this plus magnifying tool. You can just click and drag. It's very easy like that. Another method is if you press the Z on your keyboard, press and hold it, it does the same thing. Okay, zooming in and out. Okay, so just want to introduce you to that. Now we're going to take a look here. I'm pressing B to make sure I'm on brush. I'm going to get a nice big brush here. I'm just going to put in this dark. Control Z is to undo if you mess anything up, so don't worry. Just going to tap it here. I want something that's kind of soft and trying to make it as realistic as possible to give it a three-dimensional feel. You don't want it to be too dark, but like you see, I have some, that's almost black, pretty much black right there. It's okay if you have that. We're just going to lower the opacity here. Because again, remember the nature of shadow, it's transparent. Okay. Starting to have a little bit of three-dimensional feel. The next thing we can do is we're going to put a highlight on it. So where the shine's going to be, and make a new layer. Again, I'm just going to attach it. Remember, it's holding Alt and click after hovering between the two layers there. Press D to make sure I'm on the default black and white, and press X to swap it. Press B again to make sure I'm on brush. I'm just holding Alt and dragging my right key, my right mouse key to change the size. I'm just gonna do something like that. Now I'm gonna reset, change the opacity here to make it look a little more, to kind of blend it into the color here, into the ball here. When you make something transparent, the other side shows, the layer underneath shows through, and then it gives the illusion that they're connected, that they're a part of each other. Okay. So now it kind of starts to look like a three-dimensional ball. I want to give it just a little bit of an environment. How about a sky? I'm going to make a new layer. Remember, the new layer always pops up above the current one. Click and drag it below the floor layer because it's just easier this way to make a sky, because that way you don't have to match up exactly where that pixel is, where it ends, and where the floor starts. I'm just going to take the gradient tool right here. You can press G, and then I'm going to find the sky color. Okay. Remember, sky transitions from a darker blue to a lighter blue, or to a yellower blue, depending on the atmosphere. So I'm trying to find something that might match that. Let's see, something like this for one color, and the other, make a lighter one. Something like this. Give this a shot. Okay. So the way the gradient tool works is that when you click and drag, it's going to create a transition from one color to the next. The one of the colors that we chose, is going to create a transition for exactly the distance that you drag it for. So if I did this and let go, see, the transition only lasts for that long. If I click and drag longer, see, the transition started where I started clicking and it ended where I let go. So that's how it works. If you hold Shift and click and drag, it's going to run in straight it was going to run vertically or in a 45-degree angle or horizontally. Okay, so that's really helpful. I'm gonna let go when I feel like I'm getting what I want here. Maybe something like that is fine. This color is a little bit odd. Let's see if I can maybe just warmer, not so green. Maybe that's all right. So the longer transition kind of creates the illusion of a softer gradient in the back. Okay. I just did that only because it seems like there's a strong light source on the top right corner from coming from the back of us, so it would actually make more sense if the top is bright, but then it looks like indoor lighting, so never mind that. Do whatever you like, but that's how the gradient tool works. I'm still going to go with the sky. Okay. Every time you do it, it just replaces the current pixels. At the end of the day, we were just replacing pixels with what was currently there, which was pure white in the beginning. That's all we're doing. Every layer you add, after we save it out, it just replaced that pixel. That's all it did. Okay. Nothing fancier than that. All right. So this shadow, it's a bit harsh. It's a bit, the edge is too sharp. What we want to do is soften it. So let's go to this shadow layer here. And then let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Gaussian blur is just the most typical, easy, quick, light way to do to make blurs. Whereas the other ones, feel free to play around with. They all have different kinds of blurs, like motion blur, lens blur, and all that. But Gaussian blur is the most go-to one, in the at least in the animation in the game industry. So here we go. You can change the radius and just find something that's not too blurry, but gives it a soft edge to give the illusion that it's shadow and that there's light. There's still some light, bouncing around here. This is not a perfect edge. Okay. All right. I feel like the ball is a bit too high, too low from the shadow. I'm just going to move this here. It's a little better. Control T. All right. So at this point we have a lot of layers here, and as we add more, it might get a little hard to remember which is what. So you can always rename a layer by double clicking on the text here. So this top one here, that was a highlight. I'm going to hit tab and it goes to the next one. This is ball shading. Next one, ball. Next one is shadow, floor, sky. Okay. At this point you might want to save your work. Do Control S or File, Save, and save it to my desktop here. You can color whatever you want. Ball project. Hit save. Hit OK. You can do don't show again here, but I like to keep it just so I know that I did a regular save of a PSD. A PSD file is the Photoshop file that will contain all this information that we've been working on. So I normally don't like to hit don't show again because this indicates to me that this saved as a regular PSD. Okay, because saving it in other formats pop up different things or don't have any pop up at all. So I just want to make sure I am saving it in the right format. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to show you what that format looks like. It's this right here. You see it says, here if I go to Properties, this is a PSD, okay? We need PSDs to keep our layers and all the functions that we need to continue working on it. Okay, so now I just want to show you the text tool here. Press T, it brings me to this little text tool. If you click anywhere in the canvas, this will pop up, and just like any Word program, you have your font and all that size. These you can download more fonts from online and just drag and drop it into your Windows font folder. I'll show you that in a second. And it'll update here right away. Okay. So the font folder, if you're using Windows, just type in font, click on that. It's going to be one of these TTP files. Okay. No, sorry, TTF files. When you go to a website and you go to like free fonts. Hold on. If you Google royalty-free fonts, this 1001 fonts tends to be the most go-to one. Let's say you like the Spider-Man one. If you hit download, you'll find the TTF file in here. Save it to my desktop. See right here. True type font. I'm just going to click and drag it into that font folder here. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, because it's in a compressed folder. You have to extract that first. Okay, drag it in here. And it should be here right away. It normally updates pretty quickly. Let's see if it did that. Oh yeah, what was it called again? The name of this one. Homo something there. So I'm just going to type Homo. There it is. Homo Arkin. So there it is. That text right there is just by default, just as a placeholder. So you can type. I'm going to type your name. I'll click on this here. Control T. Put it here on the ball. Okay. And then let's say I want it to arc. I'm going to press this. You don't need to highlight it actually. Just going to press this. Go to arc. That needed to be highlighted or clicked into, not highlighted, but clicked into. Okay. Just want to give it something to feel like it's wrapping around the title there. Another thing I want to show you is with your text, at any time you can, I'm doing Control A to select everything. You can go to this little folder with the lines in it, and this will pop up. We can do all sorts of stuff. You can change the size by clicking and dragging here, size of the font, and all these other ways of reorientating it. Okay, so this stretches it. It stretches the letters themselves. And then there's this one where it positions it. It positions the letters themselves from where you started typing. This one's pretty useful. It's how close the letters are vertically. See? It's not changing the size of the text actually. It looks like it because of its arc happening right now. And this is its horizontal orientation of the letters themselves. Okay. So I just wanted to show you this tool here. It's the folder. Remember, everything is also in here, Windows. This is the character window here. Okay, that's that. And then I want to show you just one more thing here. We can, let's say you want to change the position of the ball now. Let's say, hey, I don't want this here anymore. I want it somewhere else. You can do Control T. Everything else stays, see? Only the ball's moving. Because we're not selecting everything else that's attached to it. We'll need to select everything by clicking Control. Remember on Mac it's going to be Command. And selecting those simultaneously. And then do a Control T. Now it'll move together. So I didn't include the shadow. There we go. Okay. It's giving me a bigger boundary because it's including some of these things that are further out, like the ball shaping and stuff. Okay. Now let's say I want to duplicate this whole thing that we made. It'll be easier to just make a group of all this. And with the shadow too. By the way, you can click the top one and hold Shift and click the bottom one. And it'll just select everything all the way through, rather than holding Control and clicking individually there. I'm going to do a Control J. That duplicates everything that you have highlighted. And then I'm going to do a Control G, and it puts it in a group. And I'm going to do a Control T right now. And I'm moving it off to the side. It's a complete duplicate. So remember, Control J is for duplicating. This too, I can do a Control G. So this is ball 1, ball 2. I don't know why those are capitalized like that. Okay. Let's say I want to move this off into the distance. And let's say I'm tired of all this extra space here that I have to deal with, these boundaries. All I have to do really, let's say I'm just, I'm fed up with that, I just want a simple image to deal with. You can make a new layer, hold Shift or Control and click on the that whole group there. Do a right click, go to Merge Layers. Because there's an empty layer above it, when you merge a layer with an empty layer above it, it'll merge everything else underneath, removing all its properties but keeping its final image. So now I do a Control T. See, we just simplified everything there. We could have taken another approach and do a Control Z and made it into what's called a smart object. Right click and go to Convert to Smart Object. Now, this does simplify it all. So it's not, you don't see the group anymore, but you're still going to get everything else. But the thing about a smart object is that if I do a Control T and I scale it down, here, let me show you this first. The thing about this is, let me show you what happens. If I didn't do that, I'm going to do Control J right here to duplicate it. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to make a new layer, merge it down. Okay, not merge it down, but merge layers. Merge down is different. If I were to take this and I were to do a Control T, and say I make it real small, like that. Say I want to go even smaller, like that. Okay. Now it's at the pixel level. If I wanted to make this bigger, what do you think it's going to look like? If I wanted to make it back big again, so it's going to expand from what it knows here from the pixels. And do a Control T. Still Control T. Bring it back and hit Enter. See, it did its best guess. That's already pretty good already. It remembered a little bit. See, whereas if it was a smart object, and you know it's a smart object when it has this little icon here. I do a Control T. I'm going to move it down all the way. Even further. Same pixel level. Okay, it's about the same there. Even if I go real small. Okay. Now if I expand it now, you probably already know what's going to happen. See, it keeps everything. It keeps everything just as crisp as it started out as. Because the pixels here are actually on a whole nother file. If you double click this little icon here, we enter that file. So this ball, for example, if I change the color, smaller. So this is in the other file, the other tab that popped up here after I double clicked. Okay, I double clicked that icon earlier. If I do a Control U, and change the color, and I hit enter, and then I do a Control S. It updates that on the master layer right away. If I draw on anything here, same idea. If I make a new layer, I'm still in my smart layer here. If I click in this tab, it goes to our previous project. If I click into here, it goes into our smart layer. So if I draw in here, and I already started doing that. Okay. Caps lock on again. Maybe that's not so good of a color to demonstrate. Here we go. It's more obvious. If I do a Control S, see how that just updated? So in your smart layer, it's like having a whole nother project happening within this project, and it keeps all the resolution and everything as it was originally created as. So that's how a smart layer works. It's very useful later on when you're working on more graphic designy, resolution sensitive images. Okay, I'm going to close out of this. We don't need this. I just wanted to show you the smart layer. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to give the illusion that there is another ball, exact same ball, a little further away in the distance. I do Control J, Control T. I'm not going to do a smart layer. I'm just going to. I want that shadow in there too. Control J, Control T. I'm not going to do a smart layer. I'm just going to. Well, I will. But what I'm going to do is make a new layer. I am going to flatten it, and make it tiny, and make it simplify it to a single layer. Okay, and then I'm going to make it a smart layer. Convert to smart object. Now I'm going to make it small. I'm going to Control T. Make it small, off in the distance. Say something like that. Now remember, when it's further out here, we're going to see less of the mass of shadow compared to what's in front. So as it goes back, that shadow should be narrower. I'm going to double click this here. I want the shadow to be more narrow. Oh, we can't do that, and that's why we needed actually to keep that layer there. Hang on. Sorry guys. This is the fun of Photoshop. It's the kind of stuff we always got to be thinking about in every project. We're failing around with this. Never stops. Okay. So I'm merging these layers, keeping the shadow, because I'm going to keep that. Okay. Right click after selecting these two. Right click, go to Convert to Smart Object. Control T. Go down here. Now, when I double click into it, I'm going to have that shadow to play around with. And I just want it to be a little narrower. So to change the size of something, if I just click and drag, it's going to change it uniformly. But I just want to make it flatter. So you're going to have to click and hold Shift, and that squeezes it. If I did it on this side, holding Shift, it'll only change the width. I don't want that. If I didn't hold Shift, it'd change it together. Okay. So I want it to be flatter. I hit Enter, Control S. Okay. And that gives the illusion that it's a little further away. Alright. So, I just wanted to cover these things for now. These are some basic selection, creating solid shapes, attaching layers, and creating your text, and creating a sense of distance here. Just want to show you that. Speaking of distance, one more thing we can do is some atmospheric perspective, and that is I'm holding Alt and clicking. I'm going to sample a color in the sky here to show something really in the distance. There's going to be moisture in the air that covers the object that's going further into space. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to fill this layer with this single color. and then I'm going to hold Alt and attach it to that ball. I'm going to lower the opacity. We only need a little bit. I don't know if you ever noticed a mountain far away can just be one solid color sometimes, and that's because of this. That distant layer. I'm going to create another one of these. I'm going to hold Alt. Here's another way to duplicate. Hold Alt, click and drag. Okay. Control T. I'm going to put this over here. Say a real far one. This time, because it's so small, I'm not going to deal with the shadow. But because it's this small, it's kind of warranted. I'll put it here to kind of prove the point. I won't go that that it's not because it's in order that you think it's further away. And I'm going to hold Alt and drag that above and attach it to. Because it's so small, it's warranted. It's allowed for us to add more atmosphere. I just want to prove the point to you that it looks further away. It gives the illusion that it's further away. Okay, imagine if you just saw this for the first time. Is there an illusion? Do you feel like there's distance, that there's space from one ball to the next? Does it go further back in the background? Obviously, it's not true. It's just, we're still working with pixels. There's no distance, there's no space at all. We're creating an illusion of space. You see that? Everything's still in pixel, everything's just flat. The whole thing is just a flat image. And to save it out, do Control Alt S. You can also go to File here, because some of you are using Mac. The File, Save As, and then go just save it out. We're going to want to save it out as a JPEG. So the two most commonly used formats are JPEG and PNG. PNG holds a lot of the information still. JPEG takes away a lot of some of the information, but it has the ability to make it lighter, so it's easy to transfer to email and stuff. PNG is good for anything with transparency or something that is really big and you want to keep a lot of information. It's very crucial that you don't lose a single bit of a single shade of color. But JPEG is fine. You're not going to notice any loss of color. It's something very, very, very subtle. So JPEG. Ball project. Save. Keep it at maximum. Hit OK. Alright, now you've created if it's your first time, congratulations. You've created your first JPEG image. Right here. So I just want to show you, at the end of the day, we're all just working on a 2D image plane, and we're just creating illusions of things. Illusions of distance, illusions of atmosphere, light and shadow, illusions.